learned that the worst parts, the best parts, this is the best of the rest.
Hello, and nothing in this universe is unkillable with the proper voltage. Welcome to Best of the Rest, the show where we take a second look at comic book movies that were poorly received upon release and challenge ourselves to only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. And this week, we are talking Men in Black International. My name is Chris Logan, and I am joined as always by my intergalactic co-host, Andrew Williams. You ready to jump into this one, Andrew?
Yeah, I have no pun ready to go. Yes, I'm ready to go.
Let's just do it. The puns on this show, Andrew?
This isn't the time for puns.
Andrew, Men in Black International, what is your history with this movie? Did you see it in theaters by chance? Have you seen it before this week?
I have seen it before this week. I've watched it before, not actually that long ago. I don't think I saw it in theaters, despite the fact that everything about it seemed like a fairly winning combination. I think it came out and I saw kind of how it was like DOA almost, and that just kind of put it off until home video. But I have seen it before, and I'm definitely interested in talking about it. I think this is definitely an interesting movie to analyze for our podcast.
I am fascinated with the reception of this movie. I will say I had not seen it before. I really love the Men in Black franchise, mostly off the strength of that first movie, which it's to be honest, it's the perfect film. Men in Black 2, we've talked about on this very podcast. I think Men in Black 3 was a step in the right direction for the franchise, coming off of Men in Black 2, and then it kind of goes dormant. And this is technically a sequel. It's in the same universe, but it's a soft reboot because we got new characters and new locations. But it's very much a Men in Black movie, and it's starring people that I love. The cast is great. So just like you were saying, like, it's checking a lot of boxes. The trailer, the marketing for this movie was insane. I saw that trailer so many times.
Yeah.
That song that's in the trailer was stuck in my head forever. And I'll say that the trailer looked like Men in Black. I recognized the guns, the suits, the cars. I'm like, okay, this feels like Men in Black. Beyond that, it wasn't grabbing me too much. But I had enough interest to see it. And then, like you said, dead on arrival. The critics absolutely panned this movie. I personally don't know anybody that saw it in theaters. I didn't have any direct word of mouth, but kind of just the internet and general census was that it's boring, it's bland, it's a cash grab or whatever you want to say. I heard nothing positive about it, and so I didn't bother seeing it in theaters and didn't get around to watching it until preparing for this podcast. And what did I think? Well, we're going to jump into it. Specifically, the positives, the best parts of this movie, what is actually working here. Based on that reception, you can assume there's been a lot of conversations about this movie, but most of them have not been positive, and we aim to change that. You ready, Andrew?
Yeah, I say this with as much respect as possible. I don't know if people have really talked about this movie, honestly. It really just feels like it came and went. It's like so fast. Like it
definitely
left almost no impact. Like we were talking about. It's actually interesting to me because the gap between Men in Black 2 and 3 is longer than the gap between Men in Black 2 and this movie.
Right.
And the gap, we'll talk about this more a little bit, I'm sure, but it's very interesting to me to look at this movie. This was two pretty hot stars. Again, we'll talk about all that. And like a director who was coming off a pretty big success.
Two very attractive stars is what you're saying.
Yes. Two very attractive stars.
People. Yeah.
A director coming off a pretty big success at the time. And just, it feels like this came and what, like, you can look at the Rotten Tomatoes score, sure, but I think the bigger point to me is it's just like nobody talks about Men in Black International. Like it's like it came and the entire world was collectively like, all right, we're gonna move on from this. Like it's almost an achievement in that way. So I'm definitely interested in talking about it.
Well, let's set the stage a little bit. The movie comes out June 14th, 2019. So it comes out when theaters are still normal.
Yep.
One of the reasons maybe this isn't talked about is because less than a year later, we enter this pandemic and the world changes. And this didn't leave much of a mark before that, so it has that much less of a chance to stay in the public consciousness because the world just quickly changes. It was made on a budget of $110 million, so the studio was all in. I mean, Men in Black 3 cost more, but that was the most expensive movie ever made at the time, so you can't expect that budget to keep on going up, but they weren't really hedging their bets. They were going all in on making a good-looking Men in Black movie. At the box office, it only brings in $254 million. Now, if this was a modest budget, if they made this for $40 to $60 million, they'd probably be happy with that. But that is barely covering the total cost of the movie. You got the production budget. I already mentioned the crazy heavy marketing this movie had. Very little profit to be had, I would guess, with that return at the box office. And we said already, this was critically panned. Andrew, this has a 23% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's nuts. Blows my mind, especially having watched the movie, which
I agree.
We're going to get into all the positives, but I'll say right now, I enjoyed this movie. Now, my expectations were insanely low because of all the stuff I heard about it, but I don't think that's the only reason I had a good time watching this movie. But 23%, Andrew, that's hard to do. I scrolled through some of the movies that we've covered, and this isn't an extensive list, or exhaustive list, I should say, but here's a handful of movies that we've covered that have a higher Rotten Tomato score. Justice League, Punisher Warzone, Suicide Squad, X-Men Origins Wolverine, Daredevil. All of those movies have a higher Rotten Tomato score than Men in Black International. What do you think about that? Does that surprise you? Isn't that crazy?
It does, and it may. The thing that's tough to kind of gauge with Rotten Tomatoes, and even I'll admit this sometimes, is that all that's really saying is that 23% of critics thought it was good. It didn't say how good they thought it was, and it doesn't say how good the other 77% thought how bad it was. So it may be that, everybody was like, this is just really middle of the road, and it's not, anything to write home about. But still, 23%, my God.
I mean, that is an important reminder that the percentage on Rotten Tomatoes isn't a quality percentage. It's not saying this is 23% good of a movie. Right. It's 23% of the critics would recommend it. So in a way, it's kind of like measuring the movie's appeal, how broad the appeal is. Right. So a lot of high quality, family friendly movies are probably going to trend pretty high. Maybe some more niche stuff, maybe your weird A24 releases or whatever might take a little bit of a hit because it's not going to click with everybody. It's a rough gauge. But regardless, I mean, this being aiming to be a summer blockbuster, family pleasing movie, I would expect it to score higher. And I was expecting something really bad to happen in this movie to get that low of a score, and I was waiting for it, and it never really came. But we're gonna get into all of that. Let's continue going through the creative team behind the movie. It was written by Art Markham and Matt Holloway, a writing duo who share almost all of their credits. Really hit it big with Iron Man, this little superhero movie you've probably heard of. We've talked about him before on this podcast, back on the Punisher Warzone episode that they wrote. A more recent credit of theirs is the Uncharted movie. Andrew, they finally made an Uncharted movie. They finally did it. Have you seen that one?
I haven't.
Another one that looks like, nothing more than a fun time at the theater in the summer. But I haven't seen it, so I don't know if it lives up to that. That promise. And then they have Kraven the Hunter upcoming, which is currently in production. So a lot of high profile stuff. Mileage may vary on quality depending on your tastes there, but they obviously keep getting a lot of chances to handle these big franchise movies. Yep. And, reviving the Men in Black was one of them.
It was, which is weird because it feels like every 10 years or so they keep trying to revive this. And it was interesting to see because I remember when these two guys, I remember when Iron Man came out and using these guys as your scriptwriters was a selling point for a lot of projects. They would I remember they were originally going to write the script for the 2014 Ninja Turtles movie, and they were the scribes of Iron Man, and that became a quick we're getting the same guys, the same with the guys that wrote Ghost Protocol. I remember seeing their names everywhere after Ghost Protocol came out because everyone was we're going to get the writers that did it. And so, yeah, I mean, they also wrote Transformers: The Last Night, the 5th installment in Michael Bay's Transformers films.
I'll believe you, sure.
So they've definitely been out there, still working. Like you said, they just had Uncharted. They've got Kraven the Hunter coming. So yeah, I mean, some of these movies I like, some of them I don't. I mean, it's like anybody else. It's you have your hits, you have your misses.
The movie's directed by F. Gary Gray. Now, this man's career began in music videos and high-profile music videos.
Yeah.
We talked previously about Michel Gondry. I said he's probably the greatest music video director of all time. I think I'm standing by that, but this man certainly gives him a run for his money. Just a handful of videos he directed. Waterfalls by TLC, one of the most memorable music videos of the 90s. Miss Jackson by Outkast, also insanely memorable. I mean, he's worked with Coolio, Andrew. When you worked with Coolio, you know you
star of the Daredevil director's cut. I mean, yes, it was a good day by Ice Cube. Natural Born Killers by Dr. Dre and Ice Cube. Like, he's been a part of some pretty big stuff.
Moved into films with the movie Friday, obviously a huge hit. Went on to direct movies such as The Negotiator, The Italian Job, Straight Outta Compton, The Fate of the Furious, which was a pretty big hit, Andrew. I think a few people went to the movies to see that. And then Men in Black International.
That was the big six. They basically, right after Fate of the Furious hit big, they were like, F. Gary Gray's going to do a Men in Black movie with Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth. So, but yeah, I mean, no slouch whatsoever. Some pretty big hits here. Interesting that he directs Friday, and then also Straight Outta Compton. He directs movies with Ice Cube, then directs the movie about Ice Cube.
Yeah, starring Ice Cube's son, and in that movie, Ice Cube's son playing Ice Cube writes the movie Friday. It's this, time is a flat circle.
It's a very weird meta thing. But I mean, some pretty great movies in here. Some stuff that I like quite a bit. So again, that seemed like a pretty solid choice here to bring us a new take on Men in Black.
We've got all the pieces. Let's talk about the whole. Is that a good segue? Let's talk about what. Let's jump into the movie. Andrew.
Sure.
After witnessing an alien encounter with the Men in Black as a child, Molly dedicates her life to joining the secret organization. 20 years later, her dream becomes a reality, and she is sent to London for her first assignment. She soon finds herself partnered with Agent H, who has a stellar reputation but seems to be slipping recently. Together, they unravel a mystery involving the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy and a mole within the MIB. Heavy. Twists and turns abound in this movie. Andrew, let's talk all about it. Before we talk about those scenes, though, we're going to talk about the cast, and as we always do, we're going to start with the high point. The best casting, best performance of the film. Every episode, we recognize one person who has gone above and beyond the call of duty with their performance, and single-handedly elevates the entire movie, or at least elevates the role that they were given. We recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. Andrew, kick us off. Who gets your Mark Strong Award for MIB International?
I am going to go ahead and give it to one of the leads. I'm going to be giving it to Tessa Thompson as Molly Wright / Agent M. I really like the background to this character. I like the idea that somebody witnesses the Men in Black, doesn't get their mind erased, and just the whole idea that she just essentially, like through pure force of will, just forces her way into the organization. And
she pulls the old Tim Drake.
Yep. She has her own black suit. She knows what to look for. She eventually gets into the organization and ends up playing a really interesting part here. She becomes a little bit like, as characters like Tim Drake were always ciphers for the audience in a way to kind of put themselves in that position. Tessa Thompson kind of fills that role here. Obviously, Will Smith was doing something similar in the first film. But yeah, I like what she's doing here. I think she fits in well with the action. Obviously, we know her and Hemsworth have worked well together before. But I like the story she gets. I like the way they play the character. And she's definitely picking this movie up for me.
I have to agree with you 100%. Tessa Thompson also getting my Mark Strong award, absolutely crushing it. There was a couple of other people I kind of considered, and a
Yeah.
lot of great performances in this movie, but if I'm being honest with myself, she is definitely elevating it, making this movie something special, in my opinion. If there's anything unique about this movie that's in a long-running franchise, she is definitely making it unique, bringing us a new perspective. You mentioned some similarities to her role to Will Smith's role in that first movie as far as being the audience's introduction, or in this case, reintroduction to the Men in Black world, and I agree with that. But she is not female Agent J. She's not that same personality at all. There's no analog. She is a totally original character, and I love that background for the character. I love that she finds out that it's real. She's not freaked out about it, but she just has this curious nature, this hunger for the truth, as she says. She just wants to know the universe, know how it works, and that drives her character 100%. And that's a really cool motive to have, and I think it plays out well across the course of the movie. Tessa Thompson is someone that she's been in a lot of high-profile stuff, and she always kills it, and you can almost like take it for granted. It's like, yeah, Tessa Thompson's great in MIB International. Well, of course she is. She's great in everything. Going back to Dear White People might have been one of her first big breaks. She is fantastic in that movie. Highly recommend if you haven't seen it. But immediately she's in, Creed. So that's a huge franchise there. She's in, of course, the MCU as Valkyrie alongside Chris Hemsworth, as you said earlier. Showing up here, another big franchise role. So she is all over the place, always crushing it. And got to give her those props on the Mark Strong Award.
Yeah, absolutely. I think she's become quite an asset at this point. And I mean, like I said, when they announced her and Hemsworth as the leads for this movie, I was like, fantastic. Like, this was coming off of Thor Ragnarok, where you were like, oh, great. We know these two work super well together. And I think she's definitely rises to the task. Like you said, she's ready to jump into this. She hits the ground running. Like you said, she's that perspective, but it's not just a retread. She's a different take on it because, with Jay, you get that, classic MIB recruitment tactic of this is a guy that the MIB notices and is like, hey, he's good and can fit into this. Whereas with this, like I said, she seeks them out. And I think that's a really interesting perspective. This is a weird jump, if you will, but it reminded me a bit of that sequence in the Animatrix where that guy pushes himself so hard, he forces himself out of the Matrix.
Yeah.
Just that idea of like, I'm going to go against the grain and reach the same conclusion, but through a purely kind of self-driven method versus being noticed and chosen. And
you're right. That is a weird comparison, but I am picking up what you're putting down. It tracks. Right. I like it.
It's a weird comparison, but it's I'm sure nobody ever thought Men in Black International and the Animatrix would be connected, but I just did it.
Chris Hemsworth, as we've mentioned, is also in this movie as Agent H, the other, the co-lead of this movie, and crushing it as Chris Hemsworth often does. And this movie very intelligently allows the man to be funny. It took the MCU a few movies to figure that out, that you should just let this guy be funny because he is so effortlessly charismatic and hilarious. Cabin in the Woods might be the first thing I saw him in where it was, a comical performance. And anytime he gets to lean into that side of his personality, it's always working for me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I do remember his brief turn as George Kirk in 2009 Star Trek, but it's all 5 minutes and then he dies. I remember there was all that talk they were going to bring him back for a time travel one now. I guess just because he's famous now. And they're like, oh, we killed that guy in 5 minutes. I guess we better find a way to bring him back. But
that's one of those that you don't realize it's him until like later on. You go back to the movie, like, oh, wow, that was Chris Hemsworth in this tiny role.
This tiny role. But Cabin in the Woods, definitely one of the first ones where you were like, oh, wow, there's some chops here. And then again, like you said, it takes, I think Ghostbusters, really, the 2016 Ghostbusters is where they really were just, the dude is just purely comical in that film. There's no action to him whatsoever, except maybe when the villain takes over his body. But I remember seeing that and just being like, wow, this dude is like genuinely funny. And then obviously Thor Ragnarok and everything since then kind of picks up on it. And just, yeah, the guy's shown himself to have a tremendous range. Like, you definitely contrast those with something like Bad Times at the El Royale, where he's playing like a creepy pseudo cult leader, and you're kind of like, wow, this dude's got it. You guys need to use this a little bit more often. But I do like how this movie presents him. It gives him room to kind of be in that Thor vein of kind of like, I mean, she even says at one point vaguely inept, but also like arrogant and brash and all of that. But the movie kind of builds in a story reason kind of why, which I thought was interesting, because there were times where I'm like, he doesn't seem to be taking this very seriously. And, that's contrasting to, Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, or Tommy Lee Jones is nothing but stoic. That's his only face is Agent K. But yeah, they kind of find a story reason to build in for like why it is that he's acting this way. And I think that was a good twist on it, to allow him the range to kind of do the things that you expect him to do while still having by building it into the story.
Yeah, the relationship they build between these two characters is so smart, because it's so different than what we're used to, not just in the other Men in Black movies, but just in like buddy cop movies in general. You expect the rookie who thinks they know it all, but not quite, and then the veteran that's showing them the ropes, and they learn from each other. It's not really like that. The rookie is a lot more capable than most rookies are, because she's dedicated her life to this. And then the veteran he's getting the job done, but there's something off about him. He almost at times is acting like the rookie or making these mistakes. And like you said, it's a little strange at first, but once you realize there's a story reason for it, a pretty satisfactory one in my opinion, I thought it was just a really smart twist to the formula.
Yeah. Agreed. Nothing further.
Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson is in this movie as the credits say High T. Do they ever call him High T? I heard him call him T.
They call him T, but there's more than once that he's called High T.
High T. Interesting title. He's High T. He's T. All right. He plays T. I'm guessing he was in the trailer. I saw him in the beginning of this movie, and he's partnered up with Agent H. And immediately I'm thinking, all right, he's the older partner. He's going to retire or die. Tessa Thompson's going to replace him. And again, it doesn't go that route. It doesn't go that route that you expect. They are partners in the beginning, but by the time you get to like you could say present day, or when the story's actually taking place, he is, as we established, High T. He is running the UK branch of the MIB, and he's in like this whole movie. I thought it was going to be for sure like a little cameo or small part, but he plays a pretty important part, as it turns out.
Yeah, absolutely. So you do get a little bit of a mentor kind of student relationship with High T and H throughout the course of this film, where ironically enough, High T is one of the people that kind of points out he's not been the same. Because this movie opens with, we'll talk about the scenes there, but it opens with them on a mission to face something called the Hive. And you don't actually see how that resolved. It ends up being important. But everyone kind of, that's the kind of barometer for Chris Hemsworth. Everyone's like, you've never been the same since that. And High T is even one of the people that adds into that, saying, he does a big speech where he's like, this man is the one that stopped the Hive, and I don't know where he's gone, pointing to a picture of Chris Hemsworth, and or a painting, a dramatic recreation.
A very cool painting, I might add.
They also have one of the first movie too. Yeah, it's a very important role. He's Liam Neeson. There's, he's being Liam Neeson in a role that was made for Liam Neeson.
Yeah, he is bringing a certain gravitas to this role. He's got to play, the boss man, and believable that he's in charge of this organization. And of course, we believe it because it's Liam Neeson.
Yep. Little do we know.
Kumail Nanjiani is in this movie, or rather, he voices a character in this movie. He plays Pawnee, which is a character I remember from the trailer. He's a tiny little alien, and I love this guy. I love this character. I love Kumail's performance. I love Kumail. It's all 100% working for me. This is 100%. One of those things, when I saw it in the trailer, I saw that little alien, and again, I heard nothing but horrible things about this movie. I'm like, all right, is that like an annoying alien? Is it going to be like a minion? Is it going to be like No. He's hilarious. He is funnier than Frank the Pug, to use I don't know, I'm trying to come up with a comparison than previous Men in Black movies, but he's awesome. I mean, Kumail really brings him to life. I did consider this for Mark Strong Award. It would be a little unfair. He's just a voice and just being comedic, whereas Tessa Thompson is really covering a much wider range.
Right.
So I don't want to, short her for that. But yeah, he is just that good. He is a former Mark Strong Award winner, though. You gave him a Mark Strong Award back on our Eternals episode.
I did. But no, I absolutely love what he's doing. He's great at, like, it could be seen as a detriment, but when scenes are starting to get a little too serious, he has just the right kind of levity to not bring it down too deep. I think that it's a great performance. As it's a performance. There's no denying that it's a performance.
Yeah.
But I like the tone. I like how he functions through it. He fits in kind of, again, it's another character that I think fits in well with the universe, that doesn't really have any trouble just jumping in the action and going. I think, and genuinely, like, the jokes are funny. It's not like you're kind of like, ha ha, yeah. It's genuinely like, wow, like definitely was laughing more at his jokes than anything. But that's his job. He was there to be comedic, and and he succeeds at it in spades. And can't fault it. Love it.
Rafe Spall plays Agent C, which is kind of a pun, like agency. I mean, they don't ever make that joke in the movie, but that's what I kept thinking every time I hear Agent C. This is kind of an understated performance. Like, you would probably watch this movie and you're reflecting back on performances, you might not think of this guy, but I think this is going to sound strange. It takes some effort to be that guy. He's almost playing the heel at times, the thorn in our hero's side. So we're not supposed to really like him or even remember it that much. But he plays that part so well, the stooge that loves the MIB and wants to find the mole and doesn't trust Agent H because he's been acting differently. He plays it so good. My favorite scene of his, just to jump ahead just a little bit, is whenever he's happy because he caught them, like, in the act. Like, they did something they weren't supposed to do, and he brings them to high tea, and he's like, we have to fire him. He says we have to do code 32 or whatever it is, and they ask, what is that? He goes, it's termination, immediately followed by neuralization, and hurries up and puts his glasses on and whips out the neuralizer. Like, he's ready to get rid of him.
He's primed.
And he plays that dorky role really well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. Obviously, he's been in a lot of he was in a lot of the early Edgar Wright joints, has a brief bit part in Shaun of the Dead, plays one of the Andys in Hot Fuzz, and I've always been a huge fan of his, and he's very funny. And there's a lot of, like, I don't know, because this is definitely a movie that has its troubled production history. We didn't really go over this too much during the production talks because it's just kind of unfortunate, but I'm definitely curious if there was more to this part or more to this role, but, like, there's definitely he gets a few lines in there, like one guy hands him a tablet and he's just like, so tired of seeing your face. Things like that. Like, just little weird little quips that he gets in. And but so he's definitely the one, because when they announce that there's a mole, the idea is that kind of the movie presents it as like, it has to be one of these four: Tessa, Liam, Chris, or Rafe. And so they all kind of get their moments throughout the rest of the movie where you think, oh, maybe, but he's definitely the one where, like, the movie wants you to think, oh, well, he's the Walter Peck of this movie. He's the bureaucratic, by the book, I can't believe you're doing this sort of thing, like, MIB agent. You're like, oh, of course, you hate that guy because he's the one that's standing in the way of everything. He won't just let them do their jobs. And so, but yeah, I do think it's an understated performance. Like I said, I am curious if there's more to it or if the role was played a little bit differently overall in a previous version. The long and short of it is that one of the producers, I'm trying to remember his name, Walter F. Parks, took, like, a weird kind of ownership of the production and apparently clashed, like, really hard with F. Gary Gray, to the point that F. Gary Gray, like, almost left the film multiple times. And apparently the original script was a lot more this is the one that, like, Hemsworth and Thompson signed on with, and, like, this is the one that everybody was, like, really high on. Apparently it had, like, an edgier tone. It had a lot more, like, political commentary about, like, immigration and things like that, because, Men in Black's kind of primed for things like that. Right. The antagonists were completely different. They were apparently going to be like an alien musical group inspired by the Beatles that were going to like merge into one form at the end of the film, which again, that just it sounds very Men in Black, just a weird, ridiculous thing that could work. But Parks, the director, apparently had final cut on the film, like completely like oversaw redrafts of the script and like took away like all the modern commentary. And that apparently like got Hemsworth and Thompson confused to the point that they like brought in their own dialogue writers because they were so confused at how things were changing so much. And apparently Parks kind of stepped in on the directing stuff too, not enough to get the guild involved, but yeah, it kind of sounds like this was a bit of a mess. Like just a bit too many hands in the pot. And apparently it kind of came down to Gray put together his cut, Parks put together his cut, and then the studio went with Parks' cut. And it's unfortunate. Like I said, I still think the movie, we're going to keep talking about all the positives here, but it's definitely one of those things that comes off as unfortunate more than anything. Sure. Just because it feels like you kind of had two people competing over what the film was supposed to be, and that rarely turns out well for everyone.
One last thing about Rafe, it was interesting that he said he's like an Edgar Wright guy in a lot of his movies. I was looking through his filmography, and I didn't recognize a lot. I recognized a few movies, but I look at the character he played. I'm like, I don't know, I can't really picture it. But one that stood out is Grindhouse. He was in the fake trailer for the movie Don't, which directed by Edgar Wright, so it makes a lot of sense. But I really just want an excuse to talk about that ridiculous trailer.
Isn't Liam Neeson in Don't?
Is he? I don't know. I should go watch it again. Is Liam Neeson?
No. Jason Isaacs is who I think I was thinking.
Okay. Yeah, it's I owned both the movies individually, Planet Terror and Death Proof, because they released them individually, but I made it a point to buy the Grindhouse Blu-ray that combines them specifically to watch those trailers. I saw that movie twice in theaters, and that is a highlight of the film, all the fake trailers between the two movies.
Yeah, that's definitely, because I actually saw that in theaters, Grindhouse, when it was the two movies back to back, and it had those trailers, and
and that's what I just said, Andrew. I just said I saw it twice.
I'm just saying I also did that. I'm just saying it was a fantastic experience.
We were 2 of the 50 people that bothered to see it in theaters.
There were 3 other people with me, so we were almost 10%.
Rebecca Ferguson plays Riza, the ex-lover of Agent H and an arms dealer, probably the most dangerous arms dealer in the galaxy. And it's a very fun performance. It's a character I do remember from the trailer because they reveal that she has a third arm on her back and uses it to fight and fight well. It's a lot of fun. I know Rebecca probably mostly from the Mission Impossible movies, of which I am a large fan. Does that make any sense? Fan. I'm a big fan. What is wrong with me? Of which I'm a big fan. She's introduced in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and she's stuck around ever since. So, welcome addition to that franchise. Welcome addition to this movie as well.
Yeah, I've seen her in a couple of different things. I just recently saw her in Dune, which she's pretty great in. She plays Lady Jessica.
I should probably watch that.
Yeah. Liked Dune a lot. She was in The Kid Who Would Be King, which was a Joe Cornish take on the King Arthur legend, but using kids. Came off surprisingly well. She played Morgana in that. She was very suitably creepy. And then one I do recommend heavily is she plays Rose the Hat in Doctor Sleep. And she is so creepy in that movie. My God. It is genuinely unnerving and terrifying how creepy she is in that movie. But yeah, obviously Mission Impossible being the one more likely for, I guess, the wider audiences to have seen her in. But she's fantastic. I'd actually forgotten she was in this. I don't know if I missed her name in the credits or whatever when I was watching it, but then like she popped up and I was like, oh, dang. It's like this movie's got everybody in it. Everybody is just these 5 people, apparently. That's everybody. But yeah, great performance. She gets to have some, just really the one scene, generally speaking, where they're trying to get the weapon back, but makes the most of it.
And lastly, we have Emma Thompson returning as Agent O, giving this movie a little bit of connective thread with the previous movies. We first saw her in this role back in Men in Black 3, and she is the one that eventually brings on Tessa Thompson's character, Agent M, and sends her on that mission. So kind of bookends the movie. We see her in the beginning. We see her at the end. She's Emma Thompson. She's a living legend. She's fantastic, and she looks damn good in a suit.
Yep. Goes full white hair. Looks great. Crisp, clean, perfect. But yeah, and she's there's a few other like connective threads. I know Tim Blaney comes back and he voices Frank the Pug in a brief scene. And then I think Drew Massey voices the Worms again. And he was one of the guys that did it the first time. I think Tom Fountain was the other guy. So yeah, we have a few connective threads here. Obviously, like I said, the painting of the showdown at the end of the first film is in IT's office. Not sure why it's in his office, given that would have been a thing that happened in America. But
I get maybe like every headquarters has every
imagine being
time
like,
they save the world.
Is there an MIB agent who has to paint those, and that's all he does? Like that, like he can't. Like he obviously he's not in the field. He just paint dramatic recreations of all of our biggest battles that you weren't there for, and we have to describe to you.
Absolutely. Andrew, I don't know if you saw, there's a bit of a viral tweet recently. So they just announced the NFL schedule for next season. The Rams Twitter account.
Oh yeah, I heard about this.
Tweeted they made their announcement of their schedule in the form of an anime.
Yep.
They released a full-on anime going through all the teams they're going to be playing. There's tons of references in it. There's a typical anime song playing. It feels like a legit anime. Someone that works for the LA Rams organization made that.
Yeah.
They made that in-house.
Yeah.
They didn't even have to contract somebody. So yes, I believe that someone that works for MIB is there as an artist. Companies, their branding these days, their marketing, their whatever you want to call that painting, whatever purpose it's serving, they get it. It's all in-house. They know what's important these days.
I guess so, man. It must be nice. That just reminds me of who was it? It's the Evangelion theme of Cruel Angel's Thesis, which is the name of that theme. It was used in a video for some team in the Winter Olympics for their hockey team. It was just their recap video, and they just randomly used this iconic song in a genuine video that was shown during the Olympics. And it's hey, again, that was somebody's job to sync up hockey footage to an anime theme song.
We're all better for it. What's interesting about this MIB artist, though, is that Agent O makes it a point to say early in this movie, we don't hire, we recruit.
So this
artist was recruited to do that.
Oh man, what did it?
They saw his deviant art, and they're like, man, this guy can really draw aliens.
How do you get
really
recruited
well.
to the Men in Black HR department? Do they have tabs on human resources departments? This guy really knows how to de-escalate employee conflict. Get him.
That's the spinoff that I want next.
Yeah.
MIB accounting.
Yes.
MIB back office.
MIB, the IT infrastructure of Men in Black. That's got to be a massive IT infrastructure. Nobody's recruited me.
Considering all the alien technology they use, yeah. All right, instead of making up scenes, let's talk about the scenes we actually got, Andrew. Let's jump into this movie, into the best scene of the film, or at least our favorites, starting at the high point. Andrew, in your opinion, when is this movie firing on all cylinders? What is your favorite scene in MIB International?
I really like the scene in Marrakesh where H and M go to Marrakesh. The movie goes to Marrakesh a few times, but I really like the scene where H and M go. And this is where they meet Pawnee for the first time, and they pick up him and bring him into the fold. And then we get a really fun kind of three-way chase sequence where the Men in Black are after them, but also the twins are after them. And yeah, just really fun, chaotic, ridiculous chase scene. And I was having a good time watching it. I also want to shout out Kevin Novak shows up as a character here as Nasser. He also played Bungus the Ugly. He is pulling triple duty here. But he is also just a very funny comedic actor who's on What We Do in the Shadows. And he plays the guy that H gets the bike from. But just a very funny actor. Has just a couple of scenes. But, I was watching it and I was like, is another moment of is that him? This What We Do in the Shadows kind of blew up after this, and I was just watching. And I was like, nope, that is definitely him. But yeah, I just have a lot of fun watching this scene. Just a bunch of different people all trying to chase each other down. Fun stuff.
Andrew, I got the exact same scene picked. We got the same Mark Strong Award, same scene. We are on the same page. We are Backstreet Boys. The reason I picked this scene, it's fun, all the reasons you're mentioning, but it feels so unique to this movie.
Yeah.
It might be international. It's coming, through on the promise of that title. The whole movie, they're trotting the globe, but this feels like just the setting and the desert background or where they end up, and it's so different than New York, which was where most of the original trilogy took place. And the movie as a whole feels like Men in Black, but it's giving us this new feeling, new energy, new settings, and I think that really comes to a head during this scene. So it stands out for me for that reason. That bike is a lot of fun, which uses the alien technology, and they're like figuring out how to use it as they're getting away, and they end up doing some, flying through the air, almost dropping Pawnee. They hit the red button and it teleports them, and it's just a lot of hijinks, if you will, just good. Again, summer blockbuster fun. Like that, it sounds like the corniest thing you put on like a poster or trailer, but I think this movie is delivering on that through and through. I like the new characters we get introduced to. A thing to me, an exchange that was very Men in Black to me, is just the Men in Black sense of humor, is that, Agent H is commandeering this bike. And he's like, yeah, I figured out, get the accelerator here, brake. And then the guy he's stealing it from walks up and says, and water. And he hands him a thermos. It's really hot out there. Like that sense of humor of like blending this weird alien technology. I'm learning how to fly this UFO, basically this spaceship. And then, oh yeah, don't forget to drink water because it's hot. This very mundane thing. Just the blending of those two things is just, in a word, what Men in Black does well. It's the Men in Black sense of humor, and it's a bit of a load-bearing joke because that thermos and that water and giving it to him plays a story purpose in the very next scene. So not only is it a funny moment in the moment, but it has a payoff later. So really, really good writing. Props to our writing team there.
There's a few things in the movie like that. A few little things that come back to be important later. Some are a little bit more heavy-handed than others, but it's nice to see, like you said, putting in the work, trying to build in some recurring bits and some stuff that just has story purposes. I dig it.
So as I mentioned, the end of the scene, they kind of teleport on this bike. They end up stranded in the middle of the desert. They don't
teleport; they hyperdrive.
They hyperdrive, but it's in an instant, is what I'm saying. He thought it would just make the bike go really fast, but in an instant,
that's exactly what it.
They
did.
Are Andrew. They quickly move to the desert. So quick you could call it instant. So quick you could say they teleported. Better. And let me get to the point I'm getting at here. They fall into the sand. And Agent M has a line here. She just says, "Oh God, I hate sand." And you know what that reminds me of, Andrew?
What does it remind you of, Chris?
It reminds me of Star Wars. It reminds me of the prequels and the famous line about Anakin hating sand because it's, of course, because there's no follow-up to it. There's no reason for her to say it. She's just like, "Oh God, I hate sand." And it might not have stood out to me, except earlier in the movie, Agent M is talking to Agent H. She catches him like sleeping at his desk, and he tries to play it off like he was meditating. And she's like, "Oh yeah, you're trying to get your like a metachloric count back up?" He's like, "Yeah, it's great for the metachloric," which I'm assuming is a play on the metachlorians in your blood, which is also a reference to the prequels, which I believe was spoken by Liam Neeson in those movies. That specific line about metachlorians. So I don't know. Are there some like hidden digs at the prequels in this movie with those two lines?
Maybe. It seems like more than a coincidence at that point.
Or just a lot of people genuinely hate sand. I don't know, but that certainly stood out to me.
Yep.
As I mentioned, there was a bit of a payoff to the thermos. The alien with the alien on his chin that looks like a beard is the one that he stole the bike from. And they find out there in the desert that the beard alien was hiding in the thermos. And he lets himself out. He steals the weapon and he takes off with it. And they mentioned they drank out of it. And Agent M says, "Oh God, I thought it tasted like a living beard." That was a good line. That got me.
That was good. Yeah. I do really like Pawnee's introduction scene. We do see him briefly earlier in the film when the twins, two characters that we haven't really talked about. We didn't talk about who played them or anything.
Yeah, that would be Laurent and Larry Nicholas Borges. Did I say that? It's a French name. Professionally, they go by Les Twins. They are professional dancers and models. And they show off both of those skills in this movie.
Both of them. So they appear to be our antagonists for most of this film. They are believed to be working on behalf of the Hive. But as the twist of this film reveals, they are trying to fight the Hive using this weapon. It is actually a bit of a twist where it turns out, I mean, I guess I can just say it, High T is the mole in the agency. Basically, I do kind of love that reveal, and I do kind of love that twist of the whole reason you don't see the end of the intro fight between High T, H, and the Hive is because you kind of are seeing it from how H remembers it, which is where it kind of just goes dark at a certain point, but everybody knows they beat the Hive. But it
nothing
turns
but
out
their wits and their level 7
Series
itemizer.
7.
Yeah, Series 7 is what it is.
And so it definitely comes off like a neuralization type thing of just like, you defeated the Hive with nothing but your wits and your Series 7 deatomizer. And he just repeats that every time. And but it turns out the Hive successfully assimilated Liam Neeson into the Hive, High T. And he's been working on behalf of the Hive ever since. And it turns out he's the one that's been suggesting that they are from the Hive all along. And so the end of the film takes place where the beginning started. We're back at the Eiffel Tower, and they have to face off with him. But I do love that reveal. But going back to the first scene with Kumal, they're literally aliens that look like they're on a chessboard because they've got a queen and he's just a pawn.
Right.
So I'm not sure what the hierarchy of this is. But I kind of also
I think
love that.
You are sure, Andrew. I think it's pretty clear what the hierarchy is.
It's pretty clear, but I do love that because that's all you really get. He's a pawn for a queen. You don't know who this queen is. You don't know what her deal is. You don't know where she's from. No clue. But it doesn't matter because they're all dead now, and now Agent M is his queen. But just I love the sardonic sense of humor he has here, even in that moment where like they're faced kind of down by these guys, and he's still like ready to jump at it. This dude's like 4 inches tall, and he's like not afraid of these guys at all. And then that compounds in the scene where where he meets them, where he's being all over dramatic, and he's like trying to like. He's like, oh, with no queen, I'll just have to like kill myself in the most painful way possible. And he's like holding his own sword to his neck, and he's like opening one eye, looking at them, just like waiting for them to be
do
like,
it.
no,
if I don't have a queen.
Yeah. And Chris Hemsworth even says like, I kind of want to see if he does it. Let's see if he does it. But eventually he pledges his loyalty to M, and she's like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. And he's like, you should have said something earlier. I've already made the pledge. Just like a very great sense of humor, a very fun, like I said, dry wit to it. Just I mean, Kumal could have played this character and it would have just come off essentially the same way, like physically played the character as well.
Sure.
But just a great. I do love that performance. I love his humor throughout the whole thing. Like they're having a moment where they're sharing all their names, and he says earlier he's got no name because he's just a pawn. And then she reveals her name is Molly, and he's like, my name is Steve. And they're like, what? I thought you didn't have a name. And he's like, no, I was just feeling left out. And so he's just trying to just take part. Just a great, that performance. We talked about it. It's great, but his scenes are all great. He just, like I said, it cuts the humor pretty perfectly as far as I'm concerned.
That Steve line is another moment where I was like, this is very, again, like MIB humor, like Men in Black style humor, because he's like, I'm Steve. I thought you didn't have a name. He's like, oh, I was feeling left out. And then Agent H just goes, oh, Steve.
Oh, Steve. Yep. But yeah, I love that. I love those scenes.
I love that character. I love a big personality packed into a small character. It always works for me. Legit, unironic, no joke, my favorite part of Star Wars Episode 9 is Babu Frick, for much
Babu
of the
Frick.
same reason. Love that little guy, and I love this little guy.
Yep, 100%.
The very beginning of this movie, like the very beginning, the opening credits, it's you got the Columbia Pictures logo on there, and the Columbia lady puts on sunglasses. That's always fun. I like when they change their, a little bit of flavor in there specific to the movie. It's always fun. And almost immediately we're greeted with the score, the classic MIB score and theme, and it's throughout the movie. And Danny Elfman's back, baby, scoring this movie. And you can tell, there's only one Danny Elfman, and it's again, I mentioned earlier, I love this franchise, especially that first movie. Super cool to have that music with the classic font. They use the MIB font from the first movie, and they use it throughout the film. Anytime they announce the location, the text on screen is in that classic font. Awesome. Is it? Yeah. Is it fan service? Is it hitting our nostalgia? Maybe, but who cares? I like it.
Yeah. I like when they go to Riza Stavros. I like when they go to her fortress, and the way Pawnee describes it, he's like, her fortified fortress of for sure death. And then when they go to it, it just shows Riza's fortified fortress of for sure death. And then it appears slowly afterwards.
It's like a delay and it pops up. Yeah, so good.
I was like, beautiful.
I did, I often track, Andrew, the consistency of title cards. It's a bit all over the place like usual. Sometimes it's a city, sometimes it's London, sometimes it's the whole country, and sometimes it's just a fortress. It's not consistent, but I forgive all of that because of that joke. It was solid.
Yep.
There's a few callbacks to those early movies, and again, whether it's fan service or necessary, whatever. Agent M, as she is getting acclimated, she's getting her suit, she's getting her training. At one point, she's getting her weapons, and she holds up the noisy cricket from the first movie, the tiny little gun that Agent
like a
J
tiny
uses.
little gun, yeah.
And she's like, nah, and doesn't need to be in the movie, but it's a fun callback. She also. She sneaks back in because she knows that the MIB is going to show up when an alien named Jeff comes back, this green alien. And she knows that because she read it in the tabloids, which again is kind of a callback to those. I guess it's not so much of a callback, it's just established lore that those tabloids are often based on real stuff. Yeah, they sound outlandish to normal people, but it's from actual alien sightings most of the time. So that was, fun, a little connective tissue to those movies.
Yeah, and I love that it genuinely was him. Like that was the joke. Like, she sees the tabloid, and so she goes and tries to track it down when she sees it coming. And then when she sees the scene, it's the guy from the tabloid, like 100%.
Generic green alien,
card. Like looking like a weird E.T. little green man hybrid. And I was like, that's fun.
Men in Black, they crush it on the alien designs. They've got, I'm sure I mentioned this back on my MIB2 episode, but they do the typical thing that annoys me with aliens in movies where like 60% of the people you see on any given planet, in this case, the MIB headquarters, are human. And then you see like one or two of any other alien species. It just doesn't make any sense to me. There's only like one of each species that are all so dramatically different.
Yeah.
But I kind of look past it because it gives us an excuse to see so many different types of aliens. There's these flying aliens, there's blink and you miss it aliens, tons of practical effect aliens. Yep. Some are like classic Green Man aliens, and some are like, whose imagination did this crawl out of? Like the span that it covers is fantastic. In all four of these movies, this one's definitely no exception.
I agree. There's definitely a lot of aliens packed in the scene. There definitely reaches a point where the movie gets pretty streamlined, and we're not seeing too many things at once. But those scenes at the headquarters, they pack them in, and they make sure you're getting as much out of it as you can. And they put in the work. There are definitely some cool, unique looking aliens there.
The high-speed train's a lot of fun. She goes from New York to London in the MIB train. It looks like a typical subway, except there's a bunch of aliens getting on and off. But when she gets on the train, it transforms into the MIB technology that we've come to see, all the, the chrome and the blue lights, and it shoots her to London insanely fast. Just awesome. Good stuff. Once she gets to London, we get another recurring gag in these series. We've got the big screen at the headquarters where they're monitoring alien activity, and we see various celebrities. I wrote a few of them down. Ariana Grande, Alien, Andrew. Canonically an Alien. Elon Musk, an Alien. And Donald Glover.
I like how that is immediately followed by Agent O saying it's the ones you least expect, when I would 100% expect Elon Musk to be an alien at this point.
The only one more on the nose would be Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, like that's the only way you could have done that more overtly. But I was like, yeah, why wouldn't he be an alien at this point? But yeah, and that's a fun little gag they've had throughout all these movies. And it's, glad to see it keeping on.
Andrew, you know what the most unbelievable thing is about these movies?
Hold on. I want to think about it. I don't know, Chris, what?
Okay. Molly becomes an agent. And what's her agent name? Agent M. M wasn't taken. Hundreds and hundreds of agents. M is available. James joins the organization, becomes Agent J. Hey, Andrew, there's only 26 letters. How is this happening? There's Agent C is in this movie, so I guess I couldn't be in the Men in Black because Agent C is already taken.
I haven't seen Agent A anywhere, though, so I think
Spot's open. They need an IT guy.
They do need... Well, yeah, I mean, that infrastructure doesn't run itself. I'll say I'm curious because throughout all the movies, you get a good amount of agents. You've got J, K,
Z.
Frank becomes Agent F, I think. You've got T. You've got M. You've got O. You've got D retires at the beginning of the first one, so D is available. Trying to think if there's anybody else. Andy Warhol was an agent, but he's dead now. And Andy Warhol was Agent W, so they used his last name. Maybe because A was already taken.
But Andy Warhol was his cover identity, right? Like he was an agent, and he made this persona of Andy Warhol.
So his name might not have been... Well, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
Could have been William. Who knows?
Could have been.
Bill Hader. Bill William.
If they recruit a Bill into the MIB, is he Agent B or Agent W?
I don't know. Like I said, it's totally unrealistic. I can't believe it. Like eventually it's like Agent Double M, like M was taken, so you're M.
Well, Will Arnett is Double A in MIB 3.
Will Arnett's in MIB 3? I don't even remember this.
Briefly. He's in there like he's Jay's partner in like the change timeline.
Okay, and he's Double A?
He's Double A. So because you're right. There's got to be more than 26 people in the Men in Black. There has to be.
Andrew, on our RIPD episode, there was a lot of talk about how that series and the feel of that movie was strongly influenced by Men in Black, a lot in that vein.
Yep.
And one specific bit I called out was the entrance to the RIPD headquarters was through a VCR repair shop. And they say it's a good cover because, when's the last time you got your VCR repaired? Andrew, they do that almost exact gag here with a typewriter shop. There's typewriter repairs, and that's how you get to MIB headquarters in the UK. Because, who wins 2019 is getting their typewriter repaired.
And to be fair, in this one, what I like is that the dude at the desk is fixing a typewriter. So he actually knows how to do it should a actual person come in wanting to have it done.
They're dedicated to it, yeah, for sure.
Because the VCR repair guy at the VCR repair shop on RIPD, he did not look well-versed in the repair of VCRs.
No. There's a fun gag. Once it's Agent H entering through the typewriter shop. And once he's in there, it's the first time Agent M is seeing Agent H. And he walks in and music starts playing real dramatic. And he's walking in slow motion because he's super attractive. And we see Agent M like looking at him. and the camera pulls back a little bit, and the alien standing next to Agent M, it has a huge head with a big old brain, and they are clearly manipulating time and making these noises and making him walk in slow motion, rewinding him and watching him again because he looks so dreamy. So, you know what? It's a fun gag.
It's a fun gag.
It's great. It's subverting expectations a little bit.
The one guy is just like, "Hey, cut it out."
A scene that I really enjoyed in the movie that was featured heavily in the trailers is the shootout in the streets. It's the first big conflict with the twins and Agent M and Agent H. And they are consistently using higher and higher firepower against them. And these aliens seem pretty unstoppable, the twins. They can bend matter at their will. If you shoot them, they sort of just return to their natural form, which looks like a walking cosmos, and then reform as the twins, their cover. And they keep getting bigger and bigger guns out of the car, and like the side view mirror pulls up, and there's an array of guns. The hubcap comes off, and there's guns. The exhaust pipe pulls out, and there's more guns. It just keeps escalating and escalating, which is what we saw in the trailer, them pulling all these guns out. But the scene itself plays out really well. It's a fun action scene in the streets. And again, we're setting up these twins as like the big bad of the movies. And based on this alone, we were like, how are they going to defeat these guys? They seem indestructible. And it turns out they're not even the big bads in the movie. And again, pretty satisfying twist that we'll talk more about in a minute and get to. But this action scene, I was... It feels like good Men in Black action. I don't know how else to describe it. I know I kind of keep saying that. It's kind of a bit of a cop-out, but like, Men in Black 4, it's a reboot of the franchise. It's new characters. It's given me what I want based on that premise.
And I agree. I think that there's a lot working in this movie's favor. I think there was definitely criticism that, how some of it came off, but I think it all comes off pretty well. If you did tell me there was production trouble behind the scenes, I don't know if I'd necessarily be shocked. But this scene is another good example of, I do like it. In the original movie, they just get bigger and bigger guns. And this one, they're just pulling them out of the car. Like they're just hidden all over. It reminds me a little bit. There's this gag in Naked Gun 2 where one of the characters is like, he's got his gun and he puts like a scope on it and then a silencer on it, but he keeps adding equipment to the gun again and again and again until finally he's literally just in like a mobile tank from how much he's modded his gun. Just reminded me a bit of that but obviously we're not quite doing the parody level here, but just that idea that like, well, just keep finding the bigger gun, getting the bigger parts, making all the stuff. And and just something satisfying about the unblemished, polished chrome of all the Men in Black guns just coming through here. Everything's so shiny. And not a single fingerprint on anything. It's what always gets
I take it back. That's the most unrealistic thing about these movies.
Yeah. There's no way you're going to keep all that chrome polished.
It's alien chrome, Andrew. It's alien tech chrome. They figured it out.
They do burn off everyone's fingerprints, so...
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. There you go. Would that be hard to hold stuff with no fingerprints? Like, we have fingerprints for a reason. Like, it's grip.
Yeah.
So wouldn't stuff, like, constantly be slipping out of their hands?
Well, I guess, like, do you still have, like, your hand prints? Because they only, like, with Will Smith, they only take off the fingers. They don't take off the rest of the hands, which seems like short-sighted thinking.
Well, still, I hold a lot of stuff with my fingertips, though.
Yeah, like, that's weird. Or you have to retrain yourself to hold things. It's like, oh, that's part of the onboarding. It's just grip training with no fingerprints.
The dynamic, just to talk about Pawnee some more, because he's hilarious. The dynamic between the three of them is that obviously he likes Agent M, that's his new queen, and he doesn't like Agent H so much, especially because of that comment that he wanted to see if he'd go through with it, with killing himself. And so he's very much in her corner, and whenever the two agents butt heads, we know what side that he's on. And it gets to a point where Agent H and M aren't even directly talking to each other. They're talking through Pawnee. And of course, whenever he is delivering what Agent H wants him to say, he makes Agent H sound very stupid. He takes what Agent M says to him and repeats it in a very derogatory way to Agent H. And it's a fun conversation going on. And eventually, communicating through Pawnee, Agent M and Agent H kind of get back on good terms and start working together again. And Agent M says, "Tell Agent H thank you." And he's like, "Are you sure? You want me to say that?" She's like, yeah, we'll say it sarcastically, make a face. I trust you. Do what you put your spin on it. And he goes, my lady says thank you. And like holds his tongue out and makes a big face at the end.
Man,
Solid.
I would watch.
Perfect delivery.
Give me the Kumal cut of this movie where it's just all of his characters' line. I'm sure someone on YouTube has done
the short film that plays in front of another Sony release, like the little short film that's based around Pawnee. I love it. Then once they do make up and they start talking to each other directly, Pawnee's like, "What is this? A sequel to The Notebook? I never saw it, but I assume it's a lot of this type of nonsense."
Yeah. Pawnee accurately representing so many people with that statement.
How nice is it though that they make up? They despite that line about the Notebook, they never get romantic. There's no big kiss. There's no hint that they
they won't they
more than none of that. Yeah, even at the end, they get separated because Agent M is being sent back to New York, and they look back at each other kind of long. What am I trying to say? Longingly? That doesn't make any sense. Longing for each other. Longingly? Is longingly a word, Andrew? Do they look
it might be. I don't know.
Sounds really weird coming out of my mouth.
Longingly, yeah.
They look at each other.
You put too many things at the end of long. We've gone too far.
They look at each other like they're gonna really miss each other, but they don't run into each other's arms or say "Oh, I've wanted to say I love you." There's none of that. It's great. It's refreshing.
No, it's really good.
And this isn't the only movie that's ever done that, but I still find it refreshing when they don't go that easy route with a male and a female character.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Agent H is portrayed as a bit of a womanizer. He sleeps with at least one alien woman in this movie. It's implied he slept with at least one other. And so, there's no big arc about him, finding the right alien woman or anything. None of that. It's just part of his character. They're working together to uncover the mystery of what's happening here. It's played very straight. There's no, kind of ironically similar to their dynamic in Thor to a degree, where it's played pretty straight for the most part. I always like that because we don't need it. Not everything needs to have it, guys.
Speaking of Thor, there's a bit of a cheeky reference to Thor. Whenever Agent H is fighting Riz's bodyguard, he thinks he's got the upper hand on him. He picks up a weapon on the ground, a hammer, a normal size hammer. It's not the giant one he usually throws, but he does throw this hammer at the bodyguard, who easily catches it, and it doesn't do any damage to him. But they don't, call attention to it too much. If you somehow didn't know this guy played Thor, the scene wouldn't play out strangely or anything. But knowing that he's most famous playing Thor, it's just a bit fun. He gets to throw a hammer.
Yeah. I definitely was like, ha ha ha, he's picked up the hammer. But honestly, like I said, if you didn't know he was Thor, you'd still be him being like, oh, he got a hammer, that's gonna help, and then he just throws it at the guy. It's like, didn't even try to hit him with it, just throws it at him. The twist that what's it? Luca, the big alien mobster who was Riz's bodyguard, turns out to be the same alien that Molly covered for at the beginning of the film. Nice little bringing it all back around. Maybe a little heavy-handed, but a little fun. I thought it was fun.
Is that the most unrealistic thing, that the alien that she befriended as a child ended up playing a part in the finale of this movie?
Yeah, that's definitely that's I think what killed it for the critics. That was just a step too far.
They just couldn't look past that.
No, why? Of all the places, of all the people, of all the things that have to happen perfectly for this situation to come to pass.
The universe has a way of putting us in the exact right place at the exact right time, Andrew. It's said multiple times throughout this movie.
It is.
So, you know what? I'll take it back.
Nice. You're right.
Yeah. Leading up to the finale of this movie, because it wraps up because the twins do get killed by 5 big MIB guns that shoot them at once and they destroy them. And everybody's celebrating. The big threat is gone. And the movie looks like it's wrapping up. They're at MIB headquarters, again, celebrating, having a little party. They got the weapon secure. Agent T puts it away, or High T, excuse me. But the main characters, Agent H, Agent M, and Agent C, all like feel like something is off. Like it wrapped up too nicely. And they figure out that High T is no longer High T. That he was indeed infiltrated by the Hive on that first mission. And I gotta say, I saw that coming, and I'm not like bragging about it. It's pretty easy to pick up on. Like you know that Hive thing is gonna come into play because they explain what the Hive can do. It's one central being that has these tentacles. It takes over various people that become its drones.
It does not consume.
Andrew, what would you call it? It takes people over.
They just say that's what they say in the movie. It subsumes them.
It subsumes them?
Because when you consume something, you take it into yourself. When you subsume it, you put yourself onto that. Chris, I'm just repeating what was in the movie. I don't know why you're upset.
Excuse me.
I was further extrapolating.
Let me apologize to the listeners for saying consume because they had no idea what I was talking about. I'm sorry. I took you on this wild journey and misled you.
My God, Chris.
They explain that the Hive subsumes creatures and it works for them. Now we're on track. Now we all know what's going on. What I'm getting at is you can put together pretty early on that Liam Neeson's gonna be the bad guy, that he's been corrupted. Right. But there's a lot more to it than that because Agent H was on that mission as well, and we're told throughout this movie that something's different about him. Like Fungus even like reads him, and he's like, "No, you've changed. You're different." And we get told that over and over again. So we think, well, maybe Agent H is also part of the Hive, and he doesn't know it, or he's been killed and replaced. We don't know what's going on with Agent H or the true nature of the twins. There's a lot of other stuff like to unpack and unravel. So just because you figure out Liam Neeson's the bad guy early on, I don't think it makes the ending any less satisfactory because there's more twist to it. And it's about the journey, not the destination. It's not, if knowing how it's going to turn out ruined a movie, then you would never watch a movie a second time, right? So it's not that big a deal to me if you knew Liam Neeson was the bad guy, because I think there's a lot of other nuance around that twist that still make it satisfactory. The reason Agent H has been different is because, like we said already, he was neuralized that night by High T, or whatever High T has become.
Hive T.
Oh, good joke, Andrew.
I have my moments.
Good joke.
No, I do agree though. It's always kind of funny to me when like it is always. This is. I hope I don't annoy anybody when I say this, but like, especially after Doctor Strange came out, I had so many friends that were like, "I called it," and what they called was a completely logical chain of events that builds off of the previous events seen in the MCU. Like, it's like, I called it. And it's like, yeah, you called a completely logical next step in the story. Fantastic. It's like, so like with this, like, H and T were exposed to the Hive and nobody else really has been. So your mind immediately goes to them. So it's like, well, it has to be one of them. And then like they do kind of build up the T's being a little secretive, and he's kind of still in H's corner, even though H is the one that's acting strange. So, like you said, it's not hard to get there, but it's kind of that thing where, what did I hear about? It's kind of like there was a video Patrick Willems did where he was talking about Alien Covenant, which I know you might not be the biggest fan of, but there's a moment where people like criticize the film because they were like, well, the twist that, David is still evil was easy to see coming. And Patrick was like, well, because it's not a twist. It's not twisting to reveal that to you. You are simply, it's not a twist. It's a affirmation of what you expected to happen. And with this, that's kind of where I feel like it goes. Like, obviously something is wrong with H, but like High T being the villain is kind of where it's going. And you're just getting the reaffirmation that, yes, that is indeed where it's going. So, and like I said, I don't think it takes anything away. I think there's still definite nuance to it. There's still unknowns around it still that make it still, I think, interesting to watch and interesting to see it unfold. So I agree.
They head off to the Eiffel Tower. It's where the movie started. It's where it's going to end because that's where the portal is to get to the Hive. And Hive T is gonna send the big gun back there, and when they all figure all this out at MIB headquarters, they have to get a new car because the last one was destroyed in that shootout on the streets. And this time, Agent M is like, you know what? I'm gonna drive, and she hops in, and Agent 8 hops in the other side, and she's in the passenger seat because we're in London, and it's on the other side.
A gag we've seen so many times, but
so many
it's
times.
Still kind of funny.
I agree. It's still, it was the buildup of her confidently saying like, "I'm gonna drive." At the Eiffel Tower, it's not a huge. It's the final action set piece, and it's not even that long. It's not even the biggest action scene of the movie. It's more story driven, which I do really like because we've already had a bunch of big action scenes. The biggest action part here, I guess, is like Agent M gets knocked into the portal, and she is getting sucked away into the hive, and good old Pawnee jumps after her, his queen, and he saves her. He grabs her with a grappling hook and pulls her back to Earth, and it's a nice action moment for Pawnee. Kind of justifies his part in the story, even though we didn't need it because he's hilarious, but it's an extra little bit there. I thought it was interesting that Agent H appeals to the human side of Hive T, who is now transformed into like his true alien form. He no longer looks like Liam Neeson, but Agent H is still saying like, I know you're in there somewhere. You're like a father to me. And just enough for him to release his grip on the weapon, and Agent M takes it away and uses it to kill the hive through the portal. And we got our finale to the movie. Nice. Like I said, more story driven climax that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I liked that a lot. Just kind of builds on the whole kind of father-son relationship they've had, because T is a little strange at times throughout this movie, because there's moments where like he's berating H and is like, you're better than this. I know you're better than this. And then like with other people, he's like, no, H is one of the best we have. And now to be fair, that's him playing all the sides against each other. I think I'm trying to, I play all the sides. That way I always come out on top. But it kind of comes full circle here where he actually gets to talk to T, no Hive T here. And it's just enough. Like you said, he's not like reconstituted. He's not taking his mind back, anything. It's just enough to get the job done, which makes it effective and also at the same time kind of sad, because now you know that he was in there, but there's not much you can do about it. But yeah, story driven, good emotional stuff. Good. Yeah, I like it.
The end of this movie sets up a new interesting status quo, in my opinion, because like I said, Agent O shows up in London, and she tells Agent M that she's now a full-blown agent. She's out of her probationary period. Agent H gets promoted to lead, to take over Agent T's former position as leader of MIB in the UK. And so presumably Agent M is heading back to New York, and Agent H is staying there, and we've got like this new status quo for the future of the franchise. We could have, another New York movie, another UK movie, a movie where they have to come together, where one travels to the other. Like, it's just, the world of the MIB is a lot bigger now, and I hesitate to think that we are actually going to get any payoff to this, though, because this movie underperformed by just about every metric, and I don't know, based on some of the production troubles and what the actors went through in the movie, I don't see them coming back together to make MIB 5 proper, which kind of bums me out a little bit, because you know what, Andrew? I really enjoyed this movie. I would have gladly accepted more movies with Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson in the MIB universe.
It is a bummer. One, just because when movies are bogged by production issues, you never like to hear that. Movies are a collaborative medium. Everybody's trying to do the best thing possible, and I realize that's going to inevitably lead to disagreements. But when it becomes to the point that people are considering quitting the film, that's always just sad for me to read. It's always just a bummer that people are so far apart on these things, because everybody's just, like I said, trying to make the best movie possible. And yeah, like you said, I know there's been weird talks. I know there was originally talks about MIB4 with the original cast. I know there was the weird, consistent talks about a weird Men in Black 21 Jump Street crossover.
Yeah, what would
using
that
the
look like?
rebooted with the rebooted cast. So it would have been like Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum getting brought into the Men in Black universe, which. So either way, it looks like the series is kind of in limbo. And it's just, we talked about this with Men in Black 2. It's just been so strange to watch this, like, just struggle so much.
It
Like,
should have been the biggest franchise, like, ever. Like, after that
Like-
first movie, this should have been, like, the next Ghostbusters.
But then you think about
Lunchboxes,
even
toys,
something like,
come on.
like, you even think about Ghostbusters. Like, how long has Ghostbusters spent on ice? And now there's moderately successful, lower budget sequel film that now seems to be leading to potentially something a little bit more auspicious. But it's just so weird because it's like it's like they almost don't know what to do once it's a hit. Like, it's a hit, and then they're like, oh no, like, what do we do? And I can't necessarily blame the people involved for being like, you know what, I don't just want to come back to do more just for the sake of doing more. But at the same time, it's like they can't really nail anything down. And it is a bummer. It's, because this was, like you said, I think this is a pretty good time. I mean, inevitably, it's going to draw comparisons to the original. And we've talked about things like that before. I mean, if you're comparing this to the first Men in Black, like, first off, why? I realize they're both Men in Black movies, but it's not trying to be the first movie.
Sure.
We shouldn't expect it to be the first movie. But, maybe put all those ideas together. Just merge the original with the 21 Jump Street stuff, and now bring in Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson. And go nuts. Make it a giant, huge thing. And I would watch that.
Yeah, that came out in the Sony leaks, the MIB 21 Jump Street crossover they were developing or thinking about developing. Yeah. And it sounds like, you hear that, you're like, that is so dumb. Immediately followed by, I kind of want to see it. Like, why not? We don't see that stuff. I immediately go to, like, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, or Abbott and Costello meet whoever. Like, we don't do that stuff anymore. It feels so hokey. And, like, why not? Like, why not have something dumb like that? We get Freddy versus Jason, Alien versus Predator, whatever. It's a little bit different than, in my opinion, like, non-action. Well, they're action-based, but just so different. 21 Jump Street and Men in Black in my head are nothing alike. So what does it look like when they come together and join forces? I don't know, but I would want to see it.
Yeah, it's so weird because, like, they do, the whole concept of Men in Black is you're really good in one branch of law enforcement, military, whatever, and you get recruited. So, like, you have a sort of they're in this undercover group. They catch somebody's attention. That sort of works. But, like, just 21 Jump Street is like, but it's, I hesitate to use this word, but it's a very grounded, like, it's just cops in high school. That's 21 Jump Street. Whereas Men in Black is this massive science fiction franchise. It's this, so yeah, they're both technically cops, but, like, one is just, like I said, undercover cops in high school, whereas the other one is, undercover cops in space dealing with aliens and stuff. It's this massive, massive science fiction franchise. And it's just so weird to watch. Because, like you said, you used to see things like that where they'd be like, let's put Dracula and Frankenstein together, or let's put all these guys together in a movie. Abbott and Costello meet the Wolfman, like, stuff like that, where, like, it's a horror franchise just randomly crossing over with these two comedy characters. And like you said, that used to be fairly common, but now it's not. So it's that thing where you hear about it and you're like, that's ridiculous. And then you stop and you're like, well, why not? Like, especially when, like, at the time it felt like there was nothing happening with the franchise. It was like, why not do it? Like, what's the worst that could happen? Doesn't matter now. It never happened. But it's, but yeah, unfortunately at this point, it doesn't look like there's much of, I mean, in this day and age with everything going on, I'm sure eventually somebody will dust this off and give it another shot, and we'll see if anything carries over. This is, fortunately or unfortunately, it's a franchise where it's easy to stay in universe, as evidenced by this movie. You just bring back key previous and especially now, you could just bring back somebody like Rafe Spall as character, and he could just be your connective thread to the previous films or something like that. But we'll see.
All right, Andrew, we've reached the end of the episode. Almost the end, anyway, because first we have to tackle the question of the week submitted by you in our Discord. If you haven't joined the Discord already, What are you waiting for? There's a link in the show notes. Go ahead and click it. Go ahead and enter that Discord. Come hang out with us. Come talk nerdy stuff with us. Talk movies with us. Join the community. It's a good time. As at the time of this recording, we just recently watched Daredevil, the director's cut. The Coolio cut, some would say.
The Coolio cut, if you will.
About 30 minutes of footage is added back into the movie. And dare I say, it improves the movie significantly. I really enjoy it. I'm glad I finally saw it.
I agree. I think it's a fun time. And Coolio's in it. Win-win.
If you want to do fun stuff like that, join the Discord where you can also submit a question for the episode. Like this question right here that comes from Mike Lynch, who says, Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers is an actor. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that,
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes, I do.
Without Google searching, who says Google searching? Without Google, Googling's a verb now, Mike. You can just say without Googling. Join our Discord. We'll roast you. Without Google searching, can you name 5 films from his Andrew, what is this word? I made fun of Mike, and now he's getting back to me with a word I don't know. Oeuvre?
His au revoir.
Oh, what is that, like filmography?
Yes.
Body of work?
His
Okay.
works.
All right. Well done, Mike. You redeemed yourself from the Google searching. Mike says, I somehow got 4 and missed the most obvious one. All right. Can you name 5 films? So don't say any out loud yet, Andrew, and don't Google it. What are you looking at? You looking at your phone? Don't Google this.
I'm not Googling it. I'm not
Cheater.
Googling it. I'm thinking.
Okay. I'm not going to say them out loud yet, but I can think of 1, 2. I can think of 3 pretty quickly off the top of my head.
I'm trying to think. I know. I know one for sure, and it might be the one that he's mad that he got annoyed that he didn't remember.
Because it's the most obvious one. Yeah, of the 3 that I'm thinking of, 1 is a pretty big movie in pop culture. 1 is not a big movie in pop culture, but Flea's line in that movie is extremely memorable. And then the third one I'm thinking of is a voice role. And I'm not sure. He says name 5. I don't know if I'm going to come up with 2 more. You know what?
I have 5. I have 5.
Sure?
I
Yeah,
have
5. Holy cow. Okay. Well, then
I
I'm
do.
going to start with mine, and you can confirm if they're ones. He showed up with something recently that I'm trying to think of. Okay. So let me think. The first one that comes to mind is... Oh, make sure I get the movie right. Son-in-Law? Pauly Shore?
Oh, that's another one. That would be 6 for me.
Okay, there you go. And that's the first one that comes to mind because he's the tattoo artist, and he says,
Right.
You pick it, I stick it. And that line delivery lives in my head rent-free, baby. All right, so that's the first one that comes to mind. The other one is Back to the Future Part 3? Is it the third one he's in? Yeah? Okay. It's the very end of the movie.
He's in 2 and 3.
Oh, okay. All right.
That was 2 of mine. Those were 2 of mine. Yes. So
the scene I remember, I think, is from 3. It's the very end of the movie. We're back in present time, and he's like street racing next to Marty. He's like, yeah. He's also in 2, though. He's a recurring character.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's in the gang, and he does that pretty much the exact same thing in 2.
Okay. I haven't watched that series in a while. I should go back.
Yeah.
All right. So we're up to 3 total. The other one that I'm actually not entirely sure about, I'm making an assumption here, but I know that he voices Donnie in the Wild Thornberrys, and they made a Wild Thornberrys movie. So
yes,
I assume
I believe that's accurate.
Okay. Is that one of the ones you were thinking of?
That was not one of the ones I was thinking.
So we're potentially up to 7. Mike,
Yes.
We are crushing your question, but that's the only 3 or 4, I guess, that I could come up with. So, Andrew, what am I missing? What else is there?
You're missing the Big Lebowski. He plays one of the nihilists.
Okay. Okay.
So
cool.
that would be there. He is in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
I wouldn't know that, but I've seen enough of that movie to know it's not for me. So I don't know if I even got to his part. But
I think that's fair. But he's in that, and then he was also in Baby Driver, the recent-ish Edgar
who is he
Wright
in that?
movie with I do not remember his character's name, but I
well, you don't think? Like, what does he do in that movie? Do you know? Could you describe it to me in a way that it would ring a bell?
I have no.
Or is
I
it
haven't
that
watched Baby
small of a
Driver
part?
in a while. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not. It's anything. I just remember that. I remember watching it the first time and being like, "Whoa, Flea!" And then, for obvious reasons, I have not revisited that in some time. Um, I assume it's an obvious reason, but
Okay, so we have yeah. I mean, same. I saw it in theaters, and I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to it. But yeah, there's a problem in that movie. But hey, I am now on his Wikipedia. Mike, great question, by the way. Very very fun question. We passed, I think, right? We got over 5, but I'm on his Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Let's see what we might have missed here. Suburbia, Thrashin', Dudes. I'm not sure these are movies that anybody really knows about. Let's Get Lost. Back to the Future, as we name those. My Own Private Idaho, which I have not seen, but it's like eternally on my must-watch list. I'm gonna get around to it, but apparently he is in that movie. Son-in-Law, we mentioned. Fear and Loathing, Las Vegas. The Chase. Big Lebowski. The Wild Thornberrys. Yeah, we got that one. So he does.
Baby
Voice
Driver.
out there.
He played Eddie. He was in the Psycho remake. Interesting, as Bob Summerfield.
I'm not sure I'll ever watch that movie because why?
No. Yeah.
He's a voice in Inside Out. That's a pretty high profile movie there for him.
Yeah. Baby Driver. Toy Story 4 was a TV and it had a voice there as well.
Nice. Okay.
Nice. So yeah, we passed. I mean,
yeah. He's
gonna be an Obi-Wan Kenobi. The Disney Plus series.
Fantastic. Mike, thanks again for the question. I would like to know that the 4 you thought of and what the obvious one you missed was. So follow up that question with your answer.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious what the obvious one was, because to me it was Lebowski. He's not in that movie a lot, but it's enough. So I'm not sure if that would be the obvious one or not. But
to me, the obvious one was Son-in-Law, but that's probably not to everybody.
Or maybe the obvious one was Wild Thornberrys because
but
people used to watch it. Like, yeah, I really truly have no idea.
Yeah, fun question. And like I said, you listening, get in there and leave us a question and head over to Apple Podcast and leave us a review. You can bet that we're going to read that review on a future episode. While you're on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and leave a review for every podcast that you listen to regularly. Something fast, free, and fun that you can do that the creators are certainly going to appreciate. I know that we would appreciate. And I've made that plea a lot. And we've got people on our Discord, we got people leaving reviews, but we haven't got a review in a while, so we've got to do something different. I think we got to go back to calling people out singularly, Andrew. Singularly? Individually?
Singular.
At any rate, let's see. How about we go with Jeff? Let's do Jeff. Jeff, I know you're listening. Jeff, please go to Apple Podcast. Leave us a review, and next week we'll tackle the next person one at a time until we've covered everybody. And until then, remember, maybe not every movie is great,
but all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. Follow him on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony. Thanks to Mitch of Depressed to Impress for the music. Check him out on YouTube and Twitch.tv. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. That is the only way that we grow. And follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you. The movie's directed by F. Gary Gray. Now,
Gray.
before I move into this man's work...
F. Gary Gray.
Are you serious? Andrew.
Yes, I'm serious.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm serious.
I don't know if I'm going to leave this in the podcast or not, but I spent a lot of time researching this man's name, trying to figure out why the hell he has Gary in his name twice. I was like, is that his middle name and his last name?
His name is Felix Gary Gray.
Well, that explains why I couldn't find any information. I don't know how many times I read this man's name, and I was like, F. Gary Gary. That's so weird.
My God. Maybe that's post credits. But
to be clear, I am not dyslexic. I'm not actually dyslexic, so I'm not trying to blame that. So don't feel
Sure.
bad for me. I'm just having a dumb moment.
Oh, don't worry. I don't feel bad.
Yeah, I Wikipedia'd it just to double check you. I believe you, but F. Gary Gray.
Yes.
That makes so much more sense.
My God, folks.
Uh,
It's been a long everything.